Welcome to all of you. Please go ahead and settle into your seats, but do feel free to spend the next few minutes introducing yourselves in the chat, telling us where you're based, and if you wish, sharing a couple of words about Jane. It's lovely to see so many old and also new friends here with us today. To everybody who's joined us from all across the world, Assalamu alaikum, bienvenue, bienvenidos, bienvenido, willkommen, namaste, selamat datang, and welcome to this Organizing for Power tribute to our founder, Jane McAlevey. Over this next hour, we will hear from different people involved in our program who have worked closely with Jane in past years. Together, we will mourn her passing, but we will also celebrate her life, and we will talk about her legacy, all that she has left to all of us. We will close our hour spent together by sharing a video of Jane from her last public appearance just over 2 months ago. We will then invite you to stick around for a couple of minutes after our program's conclusion while we continue to share photos of Jane and messages from her from around the world. So most of you who are here with us today know Jane through this training program, Organizing for Power, which was organized and led by Jane using a curriculum that she wrote and based on her decades of disciplined commitment to organizing and to winning campaigns for worker justice and progressive change. Since 2019, this program has trained well over 40,000 of you from more than 1,800 organizations in 115 countries. And today it constitutes a large, vibrant, and powerful community based around Jane's teachings and her theory of change. Jane did, in fact, also have a life before and outside of this program. And I can assure you that it was a very good life. She worked hard, and that's something that I'm sure all of you can imagine, but she also played in this world. She traveled all over it. She climbed mountains. She took adventurous and occasionally ill-advised bicycle trips. She made handmade birthday cards, helped plan people's weddings, taught their children to ride horses, sometimes using her own horse named Jalapeno, who almost unbelievably spent decades crisscrossing the country with her. Jane always made her tea intentionally. She always made her salads exuberantly, inviting you into her home and her life. And then afterward, when she texted to make sure you had gotten back home safely, she would send you the recipe for that dressing she had made, which you enjoyed so much. She loved and embraced this world and gave so much of herself to the people she shared it with. And she loved and embraced this world in spite of being acutely aware that something was wrong with it. Jane was as politically and principally and personally angered by injustice as any person that I have ever known. And wherever she found it, there she went. From South Africa to Nicaragua to San Francisco, Las Vegas, Philadelphia, Connecticut. From Dublin to Berlin, Jane played a lead role in countless campaigns across decades of service to a people and a planet that she so believed in. She then wrote about these experiences, sitting down at the age of 45 to get a PhD and ultimately publishing 4 books that have challenged and changed the labor movement, serving as equal parts roadmap and secular Bible to tens of thousands of organizers across the world. And she continued to work as a thinker and a teacher and a mentor and an organizer and to do the things that she loved, taking hikes and sharing laughs with her family and closest friends until very close to the end of her very full life. So today we come together to mourn, but let us not lose sight of the fact that Jane's was a life well lived and a life that will go on breathing my vitality into movements for change around the world for a long time to come. It is a life to be celebrated, not sanctified or sterilized and put on a dusty shelf in our past, but to be spoken about with the same love, vibrancy, and immediacy with which Jane lived this world. Jane deserves many tributes for the many lives she's lived and for the many battles that she's won, and we hope to be present for all of them. Today, we pay tribute in the way that we know Jane best, as the heart and soul of this organizing community, which is now coming together to remember the person who brought so many of us together in the first place. Before we continue, I would like to ask all of you to join together with me in a moment of silence. Jane was not a religious person, but she did respect other people's beliefs, as well as the rituals and structures that help us find each other across difference in this world. So I will now ask this very international community, with all of your many different practices and rituals and relationships to death and to mourning, to come together and each find your own way to accompany us in this silence, be it through prayer, through meditation, or by lighting a candle, as I'm going to do now. So let us join now to collectively mourn the passing of Jane McAlevey. Thank you. In one moment, I will call up my colleague Sarah to lead the next segment of our program. Before that, I will close with a story about Jane, which is ultimately the story of how I learned about her passing. Over the past 5 years, I've worked with Jane on a weekly and oftentimes daily basis, mostly over Zoom to bridge the ocean between her home in the US and mine in France, which, by the way, Jane always claimed was a perfect setup for her since our time difference allowed me to be put into the 6 a.m. slot in her daily work plan that nobody else would take. And in spite of knowing each other mostly on Zoom, Jane became a very important person in my life. We were nominally colleagues as co-coordinators of this program, but in reality, she was my coach and my mentor. And more fundamentally, she is the person who forever altered how I understand power relations and the possibility to make change in this world. And working so closely together, even at a distance, Jane became an important person to me beyond just our shared work. She somehow learned not just my date of birth, but that of my son and my wife. And she never failed to wish us all happy birthday, including while lying in hospital beds. She would worry about how I was eating, if I was exercising enough, or how my family was weathering our most recent move. And when she knew that she was dying, she sent us across the Atlantic Ocean carefully wrapped pieces of pottery that she had made, accompanied by a handwritten note that detailed all of the best ways to use these little jars that she had sent, for example, for hairpins and jewelry, or to feed olives to friends, or perhaps even to hold a candle, as I'm doing now. On Sunday, the 7th of July, France held its most consequential election in a generation, pitting a rising far right against a popular front that was hastily constructed to keep the fascists in France out of power. The far right was leading in all of the polls and seemed destined to win and bring their terrifying politics of hate to this country that I call home. I was gathered with friends, with family in anticipation of the results, clutching my 2-year-old binational son, who, like me, was set to become a target of the far right's anti-immigration policies. We were eating olives and nuts from Jane's jars, as she had prescribed me to do. And my son was clutching another of Jane's jars. You can see a bunch of them here around me, in fact, which my son had appropriated for his very smallest Lego pieces. And there we were, somehow surrounded by Jane. And at 8 p.m., the results came in, and against all odds, this popular front had won one of the biggest surprise elections over the far right that the world has seen in recent times. So instead of mourning a defeat, we found ourselves unexpectedly celebrating the power of the people, overcome, hugging each other and crying literal tears of joy. And just then, my phone buzzed. And it was one of Jane's oldest friends letting me know that she had just passed away. And I tell you the story firstly because I know how much Jane would have loved it. One brilliant beacon of hope extinguishing just as another light was lit. Tears of sorrow mixed with tears of joy. Friends and family who knew that Jane was dying, who were prepared to stand by my side, but who at the same time found themselves swept up in a world that remains in movement, where fights that will impact the lives of millions and billions of people are being fought, and yes, are occasionally still being won. And I imagine Jane, who loved beating fascists, who in a sense dedicated her life to that, and who was so rarely sentimental, including about her own coming death, urging us not merely to bow our heads in sorrow, but to keep our eyes up on what matters. The child in our arms, our surrounding community, the people that we've never even met, and these struggles for justice that unite us. And I imagine Jane there by my side, telling me to cry my tears, those of sorrow and of joy, to grab a glass of champagne, which, by the way, is another thing that Jane liked, and to toast to all of it, and then to wipe my tears from my eyes and prepare myself for the struggles yet to come. That is the Jane that I knew and admired and loved and will carry with me. And I hope that today we're able to share bits and pieces of that Jane with all of you, to nourish your own memories of her and to strengthen your own spirits for all that is still to come. Sarah, will you join us?
That was beautiful, Ethan. I was also celebrating the momentous French election results when I heard that Jane had died. And it felt really significant that she died on such a day of victory and hope. So we're now going to hear from different Organizing for Power trainers. And I'm going to start by inviting Evelyn and Bora on stage, who are both based very far from where Jane lived, but who experienced her incredible ability to bridge oceans. Welcome, Bora. Welcome, Evelyn. So, Bora, like many people here today, including me, you never actually got to meet Jane in person, but you experienced her mentorship, as well as her ability to be strategic and focused in difficult circumstances. Would you like to share the impact that Jane had on you and your organizing?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's kind of hard to actually speak about it, and even thinking all these different memories that we have, but I'll try to focus in the very best that I got from Jane. I firstly got to know Jane from Ethan in 2019. It was the peak of my organizing engagement back in Albania, and the program was very important for me to build my capacity since I didn't have any mentor or previous experience or no tradition at all in my country when it comes to organizing. But after some times, which I think it's something that a lot of activists and organizers face, if we are not very careful, I experienced a major burnout, which made me resign and take a step back. It was a very difficult period for me, not just not being able to organize, but it put me in some kind of existential crisis. If would I be able to go back again to organize, or will I be ever politically engaged anymore? If am I able to be a political activist or a trade union organizer? I had a crisis of self-confidence, which was it was very hard. It was very difficult. I don't want to go too much into details. And even a few months ago, when I was reading one of the chapters in Jane's book, I realized that her lessons are actually are very necessary, not just for the organizing, but even how to keep ourselves on track, not to burn out, and how to be in the long run, because this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And I remember then when I had to do some trainings with Jane, I said that I don't know if the right person to be trained anymore because I'm burned out. I don't know if I'm ever going back again to this. And talking to her was very not just reflective, but even an empowering process, which I never expected that I would ever be back on. I would ever be back on track, to be honest. And sorry. And one of the moments that I really remember fondly was when Jane was in the hospital. For both of us, it was very difficult. She was in the hospital in 2022. I was facing this burnout. I was not active anymore back in Albania, and Jane was helping in an organizing campaign in another country. And there was this need to organize Albanian migrant workers in this warehouse. And she's like, Bora, we need you. We have these migrants who don't speak English. We need them to be engaged with the trade union. There is this campaign. And she brought me back on track. And she was mentoring me while she was in the hospital. And it was so damn hard to see her in her hospital bed and nurses, and she being attached to different tubes. And to be honest, there was moments I was not paying attention to what she was talking to me. I was like a bit distracted. It's not easy to see anyone, not just someone you love and you respect, to be in that, and someone you've always thought that will be always strong. And she'll be like, focus, be here. She's like, don't pay attention to what is happening right now. Our only focus should be the campaign. And you know, I had to pull up myself in a very short time. And she was like, every day, not just every day, every time should be like, let me know how the phone banking went, send me a report. She was like reading everything on detail. She was sending me feedback for every single call with comments and details, and not being given. She was so sincere and straightforward that she was empowering me in the moments that I really needed, but not being afraid or trying to pamper me, be like, no, you should have done this better, you should have put more effort in this, or you should have been more strategic on that. Like, being so straightforward was very comforting, even for me, that she's not just pampering me out because I'm facing this burnout. But it was very important for me to that specific moment. I'll also share another moment that it really impacted me. Like, I don't know if how many of you know, but for all these organizing for power sessions, there is a whole team of people who really put a lot of efforts and train and do role plays, not just in the sessions, but even before. So we try to get our best when we are on stage, but it's not the same for everyone. I have this, and I think some of you might also notice right now that I'm very nervous when I have to speak in front of a lot of people, even if they are online. I still know that you're there. So. And I remember in one session, I had to speak in two sessions in one of the Organizing for Power trainings. And in one of them, I really freaked out before, like just 40 minutes before my session. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. What if I say something wrong to the people who will be in the session? what if I don't give the best of advices and other people will not learn from this session? So I'm like freaking out, and I talk to Jane and we go through the session together, and she's like, it's okay, like even if you don't give your best, you will still do good. So the way how she still would be like focus and being supportive, but also sometimes being straightforward to put you back on track. And I know it sounds probably pathetic, probably, but for me, those very specific moments have been very crucial to be back on track, to be empowered, and even to see that I can do this, I can be back on track, and also to be more loving to myself. And she was like, it's okay, like you should love yourself, and also accept that during our political and organizing processes, we will also do mistakes. And yeah, it's
Right.
sorry, it's still hard to talk about it, but I don't want to focus on the on the absence she has left behind, but I just want to focus on the on how her work and how the way she was has changed. I don't know if she was even aware that she didn't only change the lives of the people she was organizing, but also of the other people she in different ways. Even if I was in the other side of the ocean and we never met in person, how important it was politically and personally, not just for me, but even for the workers and the activists that I have to train and I have to organize.
That's great, Bora. And well done for going first. I know it's really hard to try and summarize what Jane meant for us in a few minutes. And I think we will hear from others on the confidence she gave and how she empowered people to make them feel like they had the skills to organize and win campaigns. So Evelyn, you did actually meet Jane once in person. Can you share with us what was that like for you, and how was Jane able to break the barrier of distance with you, and how did the methods that she teach work in a very different context to the United States?
Yeah, we met physically. That was in 2023 in PS, that is the Global Congress, and that was in October. And before that, we all knew that Jane might not make it until June 2023. So I kept on telling her, you know what, Jane, you are not going anywhere until I meet you physically. So come October 2023, she tells me, hi, girl, we're going to meet in Geneva. I'm coming for the Public Services International World Congress. And so we met. She did a training session, which was actually quite good, because we had over 200 athletes drawn from all parts of the world attending that session on organizing for power, which was quite amazing. And after training, we were able to meet at a hotel in Hilton, hotel in Geneva, and we spent 2 hours. And something which was quite interesting is that our first meeting physically was so organic. I know she always talked about organic leaders. And it was so organic, like we would always been meeting, forget about the online meeting. It's like we've met before and we were like sisters from the previous world. One thing I must really appreciate about her is that she kept on joking about impending demise and also a sickness. And she told me, come on, the doctors told me I should not carry my bike. I defied them and I had to carry my bike to Geneva. I must enjoy my life. After all of us are going to die. So they're not going to stop me enjoying my life. And I was looking at her, I'm like, I really admire you for one thing, you are strong. In terms of her impact, I must actually appreciate, if you look at a number of public sectors in Africa, originally they used bottom approach where the leaders would decide what issues are we going to negotiate on. However, many of them, after attending organizing for power, were able now to focus their organizing on issue-based organizing and getting what they really wanted from the members, as opposed from the leaders deciding what should be negotiated on. Now, one of the things I really want to appreciate, that I really want to remember about Jenny, is that even when we met at that time, despite her demise, she told me one thing which was very critical. She was grateful that she was leaving behind a team that will continue the training, which was critical for fighting injustice. And I remember her telling me, while really feeling so down, and this was her words, I have a wide perspective. children dying all around the world, starvation, war, and political elites who care not what happens to anyone but themselves until we can make them. That's how crazily she loved justice and why she fought so hard. And I remember us hugging, taking photos, smiling through the pain. One thing we should all appreciate about Jane is that she was actually quite resilient. I loved her because she was authentic, genuinely authentic. She was open and had genuine concern for others above her ailment. She also had a lot of respect, just like Ethan has said, about people's culture and also faith. I know she was not religious, but I am a Christian. And every time she would be using swearing words, because you all know her, sometimes she swears, she likes swearing so much. She would quickly apologize and say, "Oh, come on, Evelyn, I'm sorry. I had forgotten I should not swear in front of you." That was my mentor. She always reminded me while undertaking our rigorous training behind the scenes, which was always quite hard and also quite, Jen was a perfectionist. She wanted things to be done rightly so that you do not lead people astray. She kept on telling me, don't ever forget this. Remember, I undertake semantics. There's always a bad word and a good word. There is nothing like in between. And so as we celebrate our life today, I celebrate a lady who changed not only my life, but also how we organize in Africa and other developing countries based on members' issues to a super majority and not what we think as leaders. That is a lady I knew, authentic, unapologetic, and even on the bed, she's crazy. Forget, I want to agree with Boda, she's crazy. She would be training her team while she's in the hospital with of nurses. And I told her, you know what, I've never seen a crazy person like you who really loves justice beyond your own element. That is the Jane that I knew.
That's brilliant. Really appreciate everything you shared, Evelyn and Bora. I'm going to, because we could spend a lot of time, each person sharing all their stories, but I'm going to move to our next two trainers. So Jane often spoke lovingly about her baby organizers. So these are people she trained up from a young age in organizing, and I'm now going to invite Katie and KB on stage, two of Jane's baby organizers who are now grown up. So welcome both. Katie, Jane literally knew you as a baby. You are the person in the team who's known her the longest. What was it like growing up with Jane as a mentor? And what did she teach you about being a woman in the labor movement?
I mean, I've known Jane my whole life, which is a just profound gift. Jane would joke often that when I was about 1, I figured out how to create a crisis by trying to jump out of a high chair while she was taking care of me. She just said, that's, even as a baby, you could create a crisis. When I became an organizer, she took on a new role for me. She evolved from being a sort of beloved aunt to something even more, an organizing mentor, a comrade, a teacher. I've worked with her, on blitzes and in training programs for years as part of Organizing for Power, and now as part of Skills to Win, which is our sister program based in the US. And I think one of the beautiful things in the midst of the grief of losing Jane is hearing everyone's tributes to her, and frankly, being astonished once again at how much she was able to fit in through her amazing schedule planning, like to hear so many people's personal memories of her. I know, some of her family is on the call. I can't believe, that she fit in her family, her friends, her comrades, her work, and that she built such deeply meaningful relationships with so many of us. I know that probably all of us on this call have stories to tell about her impact on us. And I think, I could talk for hours about Jane, like all of us, but I kind of want to focus on sharing 2 things that I think about when I think about Jane. The first is that Jane liked people on a very deep level. And what I mean by that is that she was curious about people. She wanted to know what they thought, who they loved, what mattered to them, how they spent their time, what they wanted to do with their lives. And the first time, sort of coming out slightly out of being a baby organizer, the first time I had to interview someone for an organizing position that we were hiring for, I went to Jane for advice. And she told me that she would never hire somebody if they didn't, in one way or another, express that they actually liked talking to and listening to workers. Believing in the work politically wasn't enough. For Jane, you had to actually like and respect people. And by that, I don't just mean that she was friendly. I mean that in a deep way, she respected people and their capacity to take action. And that was where she got the energy that she put into her work. That's where she got the urgency that she did it with, the passion with which she defended it. It all came from the fact that she understood and believed that regular people are capable of changing their own lives. She believed that regular people are smart, they have the leadership, the capacity to build the power to win, even under extremely difficult conditions. And that's why she worked so hard. That's why she gave so much energy, because she knew that we can do it. She was so skilled that I think in hard moments, it was easy to say, well, Jane can do it, but I can't, right? Jane's capable of this, but not me. I'll leave that to her. But it was really the opposite. The reason that she worked so hard and dedicated so much time to teaching others is because she understood that with commitment, we can do it too. And last fall, as she faced, one bad prognosis after another, she reached out to me and a group of us about organizing a Train the Trainers school with her, along with Ethan, Sarah, KB, Bora, Everline, Jolene, Preeti, some others who aren't on the call right now. We developed a week-long program that brought together over 40 skilled organizers from around the globe to teach them how to teach in organizing for power and skills to win. And I think it's really meaningful that when she was dying, her instinct was to do whatever she could to teach more people how to scale up our skills and win and bring more people into the fight, because she knew that we're capable of it. And the second and final thing I want to talk about is what Jane taught me about being a woman in the labor movement. I entered the labor movement at 21, and I quickly learned that if I wanted to be a good organizer, I would have to stop playing by the rules that I was taught as a woman. I was taught as a woman that it's my job to be friendly, to make people feel comfortable, to always make things feel okay, that, I shouldn't push, I should fill in uncomfortable silences with reassurances or jokes, that honestly, the worst thing imaginable is that somebody doesn't like me. And I'll be very clear, I think we all know, if you do any of those things, you aren't going to be a good organizer. Our role as organizers is not to make people feel okay. It's not to make them feel comfortable. It is to help them understand that the only way their life will change is if they take collective action. So becoming a good organizer required me to consciously unlearn all of these socialized skills I had been taught as a woman. And Jane was there to guide the way. I think Jane modeled being kind, warm, caring, and at the same time, completely and totally unapologetic about wanting to win and what it would take for that to happen. She modeled not caring when, inevitably men gave the same tired complaints that she was too much, too bossy, too impatient. She modeled urgency, directness, clarity, and confidence. And as you all are seeing on this call, and as you all know from your experiences with Jane, she built a network of women organizers who were ready to support each other in this work. Because really, I think Jane understood that we have a world to win, and that there's no time. We have to go win it.
Absolutely. And it's so special to hear from someone who's known Jane for such a long time. And I love the idea of you creating a crisis as a toddler and then seeing you, decades later running this trainer academy with the rest of the team. So whenever I had a meeting with Jane, she was either coming straight out of an organizing call or a one-to-one practice session, or going straight into a blitz or preparing to speak in an event. And if she wasn't working, she had just finished, you know, a really long bike ride or hiking up a hill. So similar to you, I don't know where she got the hours in the day to do what she did. KB, you worked closely with Jane on the ground in those campaigns and those blitzes. You worked on the majority of campaigns that Jane worked on in the last 8 years. What was it like working with her before and beyond Organizing for Power?
Honored to be a baby organizer of Jane's with Katie Miles, the Katie baby team. I'm timing myself. I just want everyone to know and Jane to know, because I could go on forever. Jane called us into the absolute best version of ourselves. She took every moment of being alive and every moment of every campaign seriously and with great intention, and she asked us to do the same. And I would say that her fierce, similar to Katie, her fierce energy, constant, nonstop energy for organizing came from an aggressive love for people. Jane, and she loved me so deeply, even as she called me into my best self. She quickly learned early on 10 years ago that if I didn't eat every 1 to 2 hours, I'd be a little cranky and pessimistic. And so every morning when I would wake up and receive an email from Jane that had been written at 5 a.m. and was 6 paragraphs long and had detailed instructions of every single thing I needed to do that day and how to do it, at the end of the email, she would remind me to pack snacks for myself. And lest I forget, she would always have snacks with her for me anyway. I started working with Jane 10 years ago on the campaign to organize Einstein Hospital. So folks have been through the worksite charting training. She shows these beautiful charts of nurse units where everyone participated in the structure tests, and then she shows a unit where there's no one participated, and the organic leader has been identified as Marnay Payne. This was my unit, baby organizer, working for Jane for the first time, couldn't get anyone to do anything. Marnay Payne hated me, still hates me. Marnay, if you're on the call, I'd like to reconcile. I think it's time. But Jane never for a second doubted, as we were moving to a strike vote and we did not have telemetry on board, she never doubted for a second that all we needed was the right plan to get there and that we would get there. She held constant, unwavering belief in people and our ability to win. And so when there was this clandestine meeting where 3 nurses talked to 3 other nurses who got Marnay Payne to meet with Jane in a parking lot at 11 p.m. and Marnay signed up her whole department in 24 hours, Jane acted like it was the most normal thing in the world. And of course it was going to happen because it was always meant to happen that way. And and she just never doubted. So the thing that strikes me the most about Jane is the profound joy that she found in the work. She didn't just believe in it, she loved organizing, which is why she wanted to spend the end of her life the same way she spent her life. When Jane had 2 weeks to live, one of the times that she had 2 weeks to live, which by the way, she blew past, but we didn't know it at the time. She had 2 weeks to live. She spent one of those weeks on a blitz with 1199 New England, the union that trained her, working 16-hour days in sub-zero weather, called up Katie Miles and I, and of course we dropped everything we're doing and flew on over to Connecticut, and we could just tell that she was in her happy place. It was the thing that drove her. It was the thing that made her heart sing. She loved organizing and she wanted to die in the same way that she lived. And I am so deeply moved by that. And ever since Jane passed, 10 seconds, ever since Jane passed, I can feel her everywhere. Like I can feel her love and her encouragement. I can hear her right now lovingly critiquing which anecdotes I chose to share in this event. And I just really believe that she lives on in us. And when we take life as seriously as she did, and when we find joy in the work, we keep her alive. And I'm just so honored to keep her alive with all of you. And I love you, Jane.
Yeah. Likewise, I have Jane saying, Sarah, watch the clock. You got to be done on the hour. I love that. I loved hearing about what it was like to work with her in person, because I only saw her in the Organizing for Power context, and we saw the pictures of those charts, every core fundamentals training session, and to hear the story behind it. And the fact that, yeah, one of the times she had 2 weeks to live and then went on to run several more training programs and publish a book. Thank you both for being here. Really appreciate your stories. And the last trainers I'm going to invite on stage today are Jolene and Preeti, who are 2 trainers who have worked the longest on Organizing for Power. Hi, Jolene. Hey, Preeti. So before Organizing for Power, Jane was pretty skeptical about the idea of running an online training program and whether we could be effective at engaging people in a high participation, meaningful, and successful way. Jolene, I think you shared some of that skepticism. Do you want to tell us about that and how you ended up in this program?
Sure. I think you heard about it from other trainers who spoke, but Jane was unapologetic about pushing me to be precise in my work, especially when it came to training others. And when we first started working together on Organizing for Power, she would do practice runs with us. And I had so many because she kept putting me in different sessions. I realized much later that she was also just making sure I wouldn't get bored, and she was encouraging me to become a trainer. Because confession, I actually never saw myself as a trainer. I never actually wanted to be a trainer. I felt like we were way too busy organizing at United Teachers Los Angeles. I was skeptical about Organizing for Power as a trainer. And Jane came into my life in this like whirlwind way. And frankly, she just organized me. I've been organizing full-time as a trade unionist for 20 years, and I never thought of myself as a person that folks would actually want to learn from. It was all Jane and her vision and her unapologetic assignments that has me now on the O4P trainer team proudly. I had the privilege of learning from Jane, someone who became a mentor very quickly. Like what a privilege it is to trust someone and follow someone and hope to learn from a smart organizer who's been doing it for a really long time. I couldn't even actually see Jane's vision actualized until after several cycles of O4P. It hit me twice, one at UTLA, where all the organizers, communication staff, researchers, we all have taken O4P together. And, we just ran this school board campaign, and you could just see all the organizers writing raps together, the comms team giving feedback with the organizers on flyers, on like organizing convos, debriefing with leaders based on O4P lessons. So that was kind of like a slow kind of hit for me. And then just this past June in Manila, people in Dakila and Partido Manggagawa PM, we met and they were just referencing O4P lessons over and over again. And then I got to see Dakila strategize around another very brilliant, very winnable structure test and call it a structure test. And I remember texting Jane from Manila, excited that O4P trainings are working, like, as if she didn't know. I was like, oh my gosh, they're working. People are actually talking about them. And she actually replied just 28 days ago, and her text message while I was in Manila with Dakila said, like, fabulous, keep going, smart, sweet soldier sister, so proud to meet you and honored to work with you.
Thank you. And
That's
Preeti,
beautiful.
yeah. Preeti, would you like to share on how O4P fit into Jane's understanding of how to make change in the world and her role with that?
Yeah, I think that O4P was Jane's vision for what leftists need to be doing. Don't just say we have power, manifest people power to win. And she said it's not enough to fight. You have to win. And this was her vision of doing that work on a global scale. And with a training team made up of organizers, this was really, really important to Jane. She did not just want people with pedagogical and educational experience, which is also an important skill set, but she wanted people who have organized workers and clocked significant field time moving workers into action. That's what she cared about. That was the criteria for the trainers and the Organizing for Power team. And I remember the first time I came on the O4P stage, it was with a group of childcare workers in Toronto. And we came from one of the leaders' kitchens. It was Lucy's kitchen. And I think we joined a fishbowl. And this was the pre-pandemic O4P, right? There was one before the pandemic. And then afterwards, Jane was like, why don't we just do this all the time? You know, especially now that people are connecting remotely. But I remember she was so happy that we were joining from Lucy's kitchen. And even years later, she remembered she remembered Lucy's name, that it was her kitchen, and she often would ask about them. And so this was a global, multilingual program with thousands of workers who've benefited from it. But Jane made these genuine, meaningful connections with people, and she always remembered them. You know, we've heard already from, Ethan, from everyone, just these little ways that she remembered what mattered to you and who you were. And when I spent time with her in person, I would see that she would interact in this way with everybody, not just people in her life, fellow organizers, family members, friends. Clearly, she was, so involved, but even with people that she would just interact, the security staff in her building, the cashier in her corner store. She really believed in that power of connection. Katie was talking about that earlier, and she embodied that belief during her work hours and off work hours in micro ways, in macro ways, and I think that's why for her it mattered that O4P is a deliberate way of saying, organize that connection. That connection's so important and meaningful. It's what makes us love justice, want justice, fight for it, and measure and track it in the form of supermajority solidarity and get it done, right? So I think that was her vision.
Yeah, we've been getting so many messages from people about her ability to, fire people up and inspire them to organize. So anyone who has joined one of Organizing for Power's trainings knows how rigorous Jane was with practice and feedback. And I know you both spent hours with her practicing structured organizing conversations and preparing for a session. Do you have a story of what a Jane debrief session was like?
I won't go into too much detail, but about a year and a half ago, Katie and I were asked to train another trade union because Jane had an important doctor's appointment. Katie and I trained the trade unionists on the 6-step organizing conversation, but frankly, I didn't close it the way I should have during the debrief with those trade unionists. And then in our team debrief, Jane asked me to repeat exactly what I said, and she paused. And I don't know if you all saw one of the role plays, if you remember that Jane pause. Feels like the longest pause in the world. And then she said that she wished I had said something else. I swear that pause was the longest organizing pause I've ever experienced in my 20 years of organizing. I could feel myself sweating, and I wanted to ask Katie if I was in trouble. But actually, I just had to wait until Jane was ready to give me the feedback, which was really good, and move to the next debrief portion of our meeting. But can you like imagine, right? To this day, I actually treasure that feedback. because I think it's a gift to learn from an organizer that you trust her skill set, and you know she just wants to make you better. I'll pass it to Preeti for
Yeah,
her.
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many moments of nerve-wracking moments of just kind of like, oh my God, here we go. What is she going to say? Moments of practice and debrief. I've come to really love debrief even more because of Jane, because, you know, she found ways to give you something meaningful in the debrief. She wasn't just there to cheer you on. And she would often say that. She'd say, okay, I know you're all good. But you know, I want the good to be the best. I want you to be even better. And so I remember we were preparing for the new O4P session 4, which Jane wanted to rethink that. And so we were going to do a run through of the difficult conversation role play. And I thought I came prepared to the prep session with Jane with a pretty good script, right? I was like, okay, this is pretty good. I think this is good. You know, I'm sure we can make it better, but you know, I put a lot of work into it. And we ran through it so many times. And I remember the number of times Jane made me tweak and fine tune things. And she would say, okay, that was too much. And then in the next run through, she'd say, okay, this might drive you crazy, but now you're doing it too little. Okay, so just do it a little bit more, but not as much as before. And there was so much calibrating and fine tuning. And I think we spent 20 minutes workshopping words other than coalition to use in the script, because she was like, that word doesn't mean anything to most workers. It sounds like a BS word. So don't say that. And so we were like, oh my God, so what's another word? And so we ran through so many things. And these were details to the unversed might sound like just boring minutiae. Like, why do you care so much about that? But I think for Jane, that kind of rigor and precision really, really mattered. And I think it was her way of modeling to all of us what we do. Like, we don't have time to mess around. You know, like, this is, the words matter, confidence matters, the tone, the sequence, all of it really matters. And she had such high standards for herself and for other organizers. She modeled all the time that nobody is above practicing and improving, herself included. And so she made it necessary for organizers. Like, if you're an organizer and you don't believe you can be better and you don't want to improve, like, you're not a good organizer. You know, like, that's the kind of thing she did. And so yeah, her work planning, her standards, all of that reflected the urgency and the demands of the crisis that working people are in right now. So yeah, it's I think a gift to be able to hear Jane's voice in your head, for those of us who can. And like, okay, Jane would say that, you know, I shouldn't have said boss. I should have said employer. Boss, you know, so there's all of these things. So yeah, so many moments like that, but I'll stop it there.
Absolutely. And she was constantly trying to think how to improve the program. The last conversation I had with her was in June, just a few days before our final core fundamentals session. And she was talking me through her work plans. And she was so intentional about every part of it. You know, she said, make sure that people know they have to fill their daily work plan by hand, and they need to make it beautiful, because you have to love the work that you do. And I think that intentionality ran through everything Jane did. So Preeti, to round off this part of the tribute, would you like to share with us how Jane lived her life, but also faced her own death with that intentionality?
Yeah. Jane did a lot of work preparing to die, I think. And she talked about her death in a very matter-of-fact way. She fully faced that she was dying. She was able to have incredible perspective on her own death. She said, you know, I have so much more in my life that many others don't. I have great health care. I have unionized health benefits. I have love. I have support. I have this work, this incredible body of work I've been able to be a part of. And she wanted to fit in as much time as possible into lifting up other organizers before she died. And Katie talked about the Trainer Academy. That was one example. She also intentionally connected organizers together from different parts of the world, different types of unions, organizations, because she said, she kind of joked, you know, like a tribe. She said, you know, our tribe of people, you know, like the people obsessed with winning, like dedicated to like workers winning through super majority organizing methods. And she, you know, which led to a lot of gatherings. There was one gathering in New York in particular with Jane, and Jolene was there too. And it was just like an organizer's dream gathering, you know, where you talk about campaigns and you really, really talk about, you know, it's like a debrief, right? Like, what could you do better? What do you want to do next time? And I think a big part of her legacy that she's left us with, you know, she did this work intentionally, I think in the last 2 years in particular, but I think it's there throughout her work. She really nurtured our sense of urgency to fight for and actually win a better world. And I think that sense of urgency drove her to do her best work possible, to encourage all of us to do our best work possible, to make those disciplined work plans with multicolored pens, you know, to not just say it's the worker's struggle, but to actually act like it and convey it through everything we do, through semantics, through our charting, through everything, and to constantly debrief. Because we don't have the luxury of wasting our opportunities to organize for winning outcomes. I think she faced that as clearly as she faced her death. And you know, she talked about the billionaires, and Jane did amazing agitation about billionaires. Everyone knows she read the Wall Street Journal every day because her favorite agitation material came from there. And she would say often, you know, I take orders in the class war, and she meant it. You know, she never stopped facing that reality of where power is at in our planet right now, where it needs to be, and the work she needed to do before she died. So I think it's an immense gift that we managed to be a little part of that world of Jane preparing for the next steps.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a real honor sharing this space with you and all the trainers, and Jane and everyone who's been involved in this program in the past and today. So I won't say thank you. So, as I mentioned, Jane was skeptical about the idea of running an online training program, and it took quite a bit of convincing that this was a good idea. So the last person I'm going to invite on stage is the one who first proposed this audacious idea to Jane. Florian Wilder is a long-time disciple of Jane and her organizing methods. He's the German language translator of a few of her books and has done a great deal to bring her methods not only into German hands, but those of organizers around the world. He's a long-time employee of the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, which until recently has acted as the sole sponsor of this program, allowing us to provide Jane's trainings for free to any group of 10 or more people who wanted them, no matter where they live or what language they speak. Welcome, Florian.
Thank you, Vera. Hello.
How you first came across Jane's work and what led to the birth of Organizing for Power?
Well, I became for the first time aware of Jane McAlevey when Luigi Wolf, a German organizer, pointed me towards reading her book, No Shortcuts. And reading it was such an eye-opener for me. Because it led me to understand for the first time that the organizing model that I have been trained in by the US Union SEIU back in 2005, and that we then tried to implement into the German trade union movement over the course of the next decade, was in reality much more a form of mobilizing than instead of a real deep organizing. And like, I was immediately on fire with Jane's analysis and her ideas. And then through the Luxemburg Stiftung, I became the editor, as you said, of several of Jane's books in German. And I then met her for the first time physically in early 2019 when we invited her to the strike conference of the Luxemburg Stiftung together with German trade unions. And it turned out that this was only then the first of many trips to Germany to follow in the coming years, where Jane did lots of trainings with Verdi Union or IG Metall Union, and even became a key strategic advisor for Verdi's huge hospital campaign, the first bargaining campaign ever in Germany that was fully based on Jane's methods, and basing it on Jane's methods led to a massive and life-changing victory as well for the workers as for the patients of the hospitals. So, and from there, her methods have kind of jumped into many other bargaining conflicts, bargaining rounds in Germany. So nowadays, you can see in many bargaining conflicts, at least some elements of Jane McAlevey's methods being spread like kind of all over the place in Germany. And later then in 2019, we in the Rosa-Luxemburg Stiftung, like Isen, like my dear colleague Fanny Stolz and me and some others, we started to plan the pilot of what then became this massive and hugely successful Organizing for Power program, one of the, I would say, most successful projects of the Rosa-Luxemburg Stiftung entirely. And yeah, now being here on stage, I really would like to use the opportunity also to evaluate on behalf of the Luxemburg Stiftung this truly incredible work that Ethan and also you, Sarah, have done and are doing on developing Organizing for Power to this global program that it has become nowadays.
I appreciate you, Florian, and I love how an idea in Germany then became something so big and meaningful. So anyone who speaks to you knows how much you admired Jane, and I know you went to see her in New York last year. Do you want to share what that was like for you, and yeah, what she meant to you?
Yeah, she had invited me to her farewell party. I mean, you heard now Preeti talking about like how cautiously she was thinking about her death, and she did this not dead yet party to say goodbye to her fellow organizers and comrades and friends. And I've been there, and a few days later I visited her. That was the last time I saw her in her flat, when we spent the evening on her balcony watching a red sunset over New York and discussing the future of Organizing for Power, but also the Luxemburg Stiftung's future work on Jane's legacy. You can imagine difficult conversations we had. But yeah, we hope that in the future, many translations of her books in other languages will come. And as always, the thing that kind of impressed me most about Jane was her capacity to listen and to ask, because this is something I find really unique among persons of her position. So yeah, and like with Jane's passing, I've lost a close friend and comrade and a great inspiration, and I'm obviously so sad about it. But within all the sadness, there is also some hope in my heart, because Jane has trained tens of thousands of organizers all around the world. And I'm sure that the seeds will sprout and will have a hopefully massive impact on our fights to come to transform this world into a better, more just and more democratic place by rebuilding the power of the organized working classes around the world. And I think that Jane will kind of continue to live in our struggles and in our hearts.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we're going to be seeing the ripple effects of her work and her legacy for decades to come in all around the world.
I'm sure too. Yeah, I think so.
So this concludes this segment of the tribute, and it's been so wonderful to hear from so many people who are so close to the program about how all this came to be, who Jane was, and the way she has touched so many hearts and minds and struggles across the world. Ethan, will you join me back on stage?
That was beautiful, Sarah. Bora, Everlyn, KB, Katie, Jolene, Preeti, Florian, this entire group, plus others whom you didn't see today, who have been so present during this past period, doing everything in your power to accompany Jane alongside her other friends and family, this community that's here with us today, to take care of each other and to take care of this program, but all of the different pieces of Jane's work and legacy that she has so intentionally left to us. I feel very privileged to have such amazing colleagues and to learn from all of you every day and to be here in this community with you today. So we are running a little bit over schedule. I hesitate to think what Jane would say, but I still have her sort of in the back of my mind. I can just say that it was a team effort. I think that our hearts were a little bit overflowing, let's say, from one to the next. We'll end about 15 or 20 minutes late. Our apologies for that. But we've made the decision not to cut out or shear away any pieces of our programming in spite of our hearts overflowing in this moment. In just a few minutes, though, we will move into our final segment, as I've mentioned, with a video of Jane that's followed by some photos and stories about her. However, first, we're going to have a reading that we think really resonates with Jane's spirit, how she approached both life and death. And it's a reading that somehow sets up the final words that Jane herself will share with us in the recording that we play of her. So having said all of that, Jolene, if you could join us back on stage. And Jolene is going to do a reading.
Okay. So before the closing, I'm going to read an excerpt from Black feminist, mother, lesbian, author, poet, and novelist Audre Lorde's book, Cancer Journals. This one right here. A quick search will tell you that this book is about Audre Lorde's powerful personal account and struggle with facing cancer. But when you read it, it's actually also a book where Audre Lorde herself situates her cancer and healthcare within a larger political structure. Audre Lorde was battling cancer while the United States was sending millions and millions of dollars to wage a war in Central America while starving the American healthcare system in the 1970s and 1980s. I read this book again when Jane passed. I think Jane herself understood her cancer within a larger political system, one that she organized her whole life to change. And so the book reminded me of Jane. Also, I've read all of Audre Lorde's nonfiction books, and in the past year, I've actually been texting Jane excerpts and quotes from Audre Lorde as feminist fuel for organizing. Here is an excerpt of Audre Lorde's writing in the Cancer Journals that the O4P team wants to share with you. We share this mindful of the loved ones who surrounded and cared for Jane, siblings who I know are on here, friends, family, this incredible group of women that I saw surrounding and holding Jane up, comrades, and the tens of thousands of us who learned from her. We share this in honor of our beloved Jane McAlevey. In 1977, Audre Lorde said, quote, "In becoming forcibly and essentially aware of my mortality and of what I wished and wanted for my life, however short it might be, priorities and omissions became strongly etched in a merciless light, and what I most regretted were my silences. Of what had I ever been afraid? To question or to speak as I believed could have meant pain or death, but we all hurt in so many different ways all the time, and pain will either change or end. Death, on the other hand, is the final silence. And that might be coming quickly now, without regard for whether I had ever spoken what needed to be said, or had only betrayed myself into small silences, while I planned someday to speak or waited for someone else's words. And I began to recognize a source of power within myself that comes from the knowledge that while it is most desirable not to be afraid, learning to put fear into a perspective gave me great strength. I was going to die, if not sooner than later, whether or not I had ever spoken for myself. My silences had not protected me. Your silence will not protect you. I had made contact with other women while we examined the words to fit a world in which we all believed, bridging our differences. And it was the concern and caring of all those women which gave me strength and enabled me to scrutinize the essentials of my living. The women who sustained me through that period were Black and white, old and young, lesbian, bisexual, and heterosexual. And we all shared a war against the tyrannies of silence. They all gave me strength and concern without which I could not have survived intact. Within those weeks of acute fear came the knowledge. Within the war we are all waging with the forces of death, subtle and otherwise, conscious or not. I am not only a casualty, I am also a warrior. I'm going to invite Ethan back on stage now to please take us into the next portion of this memorial.
Thanks for that, Jolene. Thanks for those words. Jane certainly was a warrior and never just a casualty. She was a person who absolutely recognized the source of power within herself, put her fear into perspective, and drew great strength from that. Those words resonate so well, I believe, to the person that Jane was. I too have drawn great strength from Jane and from Jolene and from every single one of my colleagues in this project, from all of you in the surrounding community who have loved Jane so well and who will go forward a little bit better, a little bit more prepared for the challenges to come because you've had the chance to share in this world with Jane. Now it's time to close today's tribute to Jane McAlevey, and we would like to do so in the only way that we could think, which was by sharing a video of Jane in action. We pored over a lot of footage in preparing this, and we found so many compelling moments. You all know what a deep and engaging and charismatic speaker Jane was. And we almost created a montage of Jane highlights, but we finally decided that this would somehow diminish the very real connection that Jane has always been able to establish, even across a video screen, even from half a world away. So instead, we are going to show you a very lightly edited 7-minute video from the opening session of our most recent core fundamentals training held on May 7th, exactly 2 months before Jane passed. She is introducing our program in the video and introducing that day's trainer, who is Jolene. So you'll hear Jolene's name and some details about the course mentioned. And while it's a bit unorthodox, let's say, to close such a tribute with an introduction, we find it somehow fitting, since truly honoring Jane's memory means for each of you, and for each of us to take up not just the legacy, but also the challenge that Jane leaves to us, to go forth in this living and breathing world around us and to make it a better place. Without further ado,
creating Organizing for Power. I was macing in a room one day with some Germans, and I was in Berlin, and they were like, you should meet this guy, Ethan. He's really good at all this other stuff, and maybe you could come up with, like, you write a training program, and then he works with you. No kidding. Fall of 2019. And since then, 40,000 people have been trained. It's a pretty amazing program. This program and my life work is about winning. It's about beating the evil, greedy bastards who are doing these things to all of us. And the most important thing that literally has to happen is that more of our side learns how to win, which is what Organizing for Power was designed to do, to teach anyone who showed up with a group of people how to win. Activism is about getting fast clicks. I keep talking to young people who are like, yeah, but we just need attention. attention doesn't win, actually. Building power and creating a crisis for capital and the corporations destroying our lives is actually what wins. It's called creating a crisis. When I was a baby organizer, that's what I call some of the ones I'm training, baby organizers, when I was very young, people said to me, nothing matters. My mentor said, nothing matters, Jane, if you and the workers can't create a crisis in the campaign such that the employer has to respond and in negotiations give you everything that you're asking for or demanding. Yelling and protesting is fabulous. It just doesn't get us where we need to go, right? It can be a part of our plan and it makes us feel good. I love every building I've ever climbed, every banner I ever dropped, when I was younger. But it took me a while to realize it's not how we're going to win. We're going to win by learning the fundamental skills of what does organizing mean, distinct from mobilizing. How do we actually teach thousands of people in every campaign? Because that's what we're doing. Organizers are educators. Activists are doing something else. Organizers see our first job as teaching every single person that we're working with in a campaign to know every single thing we know. I literally there's nothing I've ever said in some high-level seminar, whether it was academic or whatever, that's any different than what I say to workers at the opening of negotiations. Same conversation. Because workers are really smart. We're really smart. We can actually stop these bastards from what they're doing to us. Sorry for that language. But time is going. And the climate, different than 20 years ago when I was starting out, we would think, well, it's really awful. There are people dying every day. What do we do? This feels terrible. Well, you start organizing and you start to feel better, especially when you're winning. But climate change has kind of changed the clock on us. There is no more, okay, we can do it better in 20 years. Like, it's now. And it's the young generation coming up that's so on fire. And we need to scale up in the most intense way. I just want to say it again. We need to scale up this work intensely. And we can. We ran a trainers academy as part of my Getting Ready to Die work in December. With 50 new potential trainees. That was in December. I was going through wicked chemo, and we climbed onto Zoom, to a private Zoom, and trained 50 more people. Like, that is what we have to do. Because winning, righteous justice is our mission. It's your mission. It's why you're here. So I would like to see Organizing for Power running, not nonstop. Ethan would probably pull his hair out. No, I'm kidding. We would have more Ethans, just like we have more Janes. As I bow out from my greeting to you and my wish, I want to do two things. One is I want to read a quote, because it actually came from Jolene, who's your trainer today, who I want to say a word about as I depart. She reintroduced me to Audre Lorde, which was someone who I read in my late teens, in public university until they threw me out, by the way, for the divestment movement. But to detail. Anyway, lots of occupations, but guess what? We won the biggest divestment campaign in the United States. So winning mattered even when I was 19 years old and the student trustee for the state. And the phrase that she sent to me one day, actually it's on a t-shirt, so I'm looking at it. It says, I am deliberate and afraid of nothing. I say that about 200 times a day right now, every day, because it's A, true, and B, what a great thing to wake up and say. I think you should put it on your flip chart, on your morning to-do list. And you need a morning to-do list to win, just by the way. I want to tell you that you're going to have an incredible class today because you have Jolene Levitt, and she knows something about winning. And knowing that Jolene is taking my place, starting off the Organizing for Power session, is part of what's letting me die and feel like what the Audre Lorde quote says. This program is going to carry on. This fight is one that you can win. With people like Jolene Levitt and Preeti Siva Kumar, who's going to teach tonight, and all of the Organizing for Power trainers, because they're all serious organizers running and winning campaigns. So take the 6 weeks seriously, do the campaign practice. What you put into it is what you get out of it. Love you all. And maybe I'll pop in at the end, never know. But I'm going to be watching, paying attention, not the end today, the end like in 6 weeks, but I don't know. So anyway, go get them and bring thousands more. That's it.
Deliberate and afraid of nothing, Jane McAlevey left this world on July 7th, 2024. Our hearts are broken, but they are also full and perhaps even overflowing with all that she has left us. It's now time for this tribute to end. I want to thank our interpreters, as well as Mike Plewa, who put together that video. And I want to welcome all of you to stick around for a few minutes and mingle in the chat room while we share photos of Jane and messages of love for her. My colleagues will share a few links to further readings and materials. We will put some music on, and we will end today as we began it, in a spirit not just of mourning, but of celebrating. As a global community, a beautiful life that, among other things, has brought so many of us together.